Babylon, a name that evokes images of power, wealth, and mystery. But there is one figure associated with this ancient city that has captured the imagination for centuries: the so-called Courtesan of Babylon. In the meantime, subscribe to the channel if you like these videos and leave a like. Now let's start. In the ancient lands where the river meets the desert, an ancient ritual united the divine and the earthly, a well-kept secret hidden behind bright eyes and enigmatic smiles. In Babylon, located in present-day Iraq, Ishtar, the goddess of love and fertility, was the focus of many celebrations. The relationship professionals who served in Ishtar's temples were much more than one might imagine. They were priestesses, considered living incarnations of the goddess herself. Every gesture, word, and ritual they performed was seen as a direct connection to the divine. The rite of the hieros gamos, or sacred marriage, was one of the most significant. Men from all over the city gathered in the temple to spend a night of spiritual and physical union with the goddess, represented by the priestess. The figure of the professional of sacred relations in Babylon was very different from the modern conception. They enjoyed a high social and economic status, and their role went far beyond the confines of the temple. In addition to guarding rituals and secrets, they often owned and managed their own lives, a revolutionary development for the time. Financial donations to the temple were, in part, managed by these women, giving them power and influence within the community. Babylonian temples were not only places of worship, but also economic, political, and even educational centers. In these complex environments, sacred relations professionals performed multiple functions. They mediated political disputes and treaties, and some were known for their skills in astrology and dream interpretation. Their influence went beyond the spiritual sphere, touching on the dynamics of power and governance. It was common for leaders and prominent figures to seek their advice on diplomatic or strategic, even military, matters. For these professionals, seduction was more than a physical act. It was a spiritual ritual. They were trained in dance, music, and poetry, and their artistic talent was believed to be a direct gift from the goddess Ishtar. They participated in festivals and public celebrations, entertaining the people while educating them about the myths and teachings of the goddess. Their beauty and charm were not merely earthly, they were the embodiment of divinity. The influence of these women was not limited to spirituality. They were often consulted on political and social issues, considered living oracles. In some cases, they acted as ambassadors on diplomatic missions, a role rarely granted to women in ancient times. Historical records show that some of them were fluent in multiple languages and had in-depth knowledge of law and governance, making them valuable assets in any negotiation. It wouldn't be a true story without a touch of scandal and controversy. Despite their high status, these professionals faced opposition. Rival religious groups and political figures saw the rituals as a threat to the established order. They questioned their legitimacy and morality, even generating suspicion among the population. However, this opposition rarely diminished their power and influence. Everything comes to an end. With the rise of monotheism in the Middle East, the temples of Ishtar and their practices fell into disuse. Many priestesses were forced to abandon their roles and adapt to a rapidly changing world. Some managed to transform themselves and maintain influence, but many were forgotten by history, their names and contributions obscured by the advance of new beliefs and cultures. The impact of these professionals was not limited to politics and religion. They left a lasting legacy in the arts and literature. Many ancient texts, poems, and songs that have come down to us mention these women, testifying to their importance in the popular culture of the time. The famous poem of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest literary works in the world, mentions Shamhat, interpreted as one of these sacred priestesses. In this way, their existence became immortal through. It may be surprising to know that the concept of these sacred relationship professionals still resonates today, oscillating between taboo and fascination. They are often the subject of documentaries, historical novels, and university courses. However, it is important to note that these modern representations, while based on real facts, are often influenced by cultural biases and distorted ideas. The complexity of their lives and the depth of their impact are often simplified to fit more accessible narratives. Sometimes, the deepest secrets hide in plain sight, waiting for the curious eye that dares to look beyond the obvious. The past is not a distant land. It is a mirror in which we see reflected, distorted, but recognizable, our own image. The ancient lands where the river meets the desert still hold, like sand between the fingers, the memories of a world in which the sacred and the profane were not in opposition, but danced together to the rhythm of rites, the stars, and human desire. Sacred intimate relationships, practiced in places like Babylon, show us a civilization deeply connected to the spirituality of the body, the sacredness of beauty, and the transformative power of the feminine. In those societies, figures such as the priestesses of Ishtar were not just temple guardians, but living incarnations of divinity. Educated, influential, often polyglot women, deeply rooted in the political and economic mechanisms of the city. Their art was not only that of physical seduction, but also that of the word, of music, of dance, and of wise counsel. They were spiritual guides, ambassadors, mediators, poets, a role that today we might call almost multidisciplinary, and which defied every stereotype about the role of women in antiquity. With the advent of monotheism and the progressive demonization of the body and pleasure in the religious sphere, these practices were banned, the priestesses marginalized, and the memory of their power obscured by new dogmas. But what cannot be erased is the imprint left in literature, myths, and popular traditions. Figures like Shamhat in the Epic of Gilgamesh remind us that these women have survived over time, transformed into symbols, archetypes, immortal muses. Today, in a world that continues to question the meaning of the sacred, sexuality, and the role of women in society, these ancient stories come back to speak to us with a powerful voice. Not as simple historical curiosities, but as mirrors in which we can recognize desires, contradictions, and questions that still accompany us. That's all for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Your opinion is very important to support us. See you next time. Bye.